Imagine standing before a door. You've knocked, you've waited, you've prayed for this moment, believing this door is the key to your breakthrough, your next step, your dream realized. But what happens when it doesn't open? What happens when the door remains firmly shut, no matter how hard you push? It's easy to become discouraged, to question your worth, your purpose, and even God's plan for your life. You may wonder if you've been forgotten, or if you missed your chance. But I want to remind you today of something powerful. God is still at work, even in the closed doors. In fact, sometimes the closed door is the very thing that leads you to the right one. The right door may not always look like the one you expected, and it may not open when you thought it would. But here's the truth. God will open the right door at the right time. So instead of worrying about the doors that aren't opening, trust that He's guiding you towards something greater. And in the waiting, remember this: God's timing is always perfect, and His plan for you is far better than anything you could ever imagine. Faith over fear is not just a phrase, it's a foundational principle for anyone walking through uncertainty. When life presents us with unanswered questions, unexpected delays, or disappointing results, our first instinct is often to worry. We try to figure everything out, anticipate every outcome, and control every detail. But the truth is, worry doesn't change anything except our peace of mind. It robs us of clarity and joy, while faith brings us back to center. It grounds us in something greater than the moment, greater than the challenge, and certainly greater than the fear. Fear is natural, especially when things don't seem to be working out. It creeps in when doors close, when opportunities slip away, and when silence follows prayer. It whispers lies like, you're not good enough, you missed your chance, or God has forgotten you. Fear feeds on uncertainty and tries to convince us that we're alone, that we're at the mercy of chance or chaos. But faith says otherwise. Faith says there's a plan, even if you can't see it yet. Faith says the delay is not a disaster. It tells you, quietly but confidently, God's still working. When you walk in faith instead of fear, you're choosing to believe that God's promises are more real than your present circumstances. You're deciding that He's not just a distant idea, but a present help. Faith doesn't require you to understand how everything will unfold. It just asks that you trust who holds the future. That trust isn't passive, it's powerful. It gives you the courage to keep going, to keep praying, to keep believing, even when there's no sign of change. It transforms waiting from a place of anxiety into a space of preparation. Think of how often people in Scripture had to walk by faith and not by sight. Abraham waited decades for a promised son. Joseph sat in prison years before he saw a dream fulfilled. David was anointed king long before he ever wore a crown. None of them saw the whole picture, but they trusted that the one who promised was faithful. That same God is the one working behind your scenes. Fear says, what if it all goes wrong? Faith says, even if it does, God can make it right. Choosing faith over fear is not denial of the problem. It's confidence in the solution. It's saying, yes, I see the obstacle, but I trust the one who can move it or lead me around it. Closed doors are one of the most misunderstood parts of our journey. Often, when we face rejection or something doesn't go the way we hoped, we immediately see it as a failure. It's easy to feel defeated, to question ourselves, and to assume we somehow missed the mark. But what if a closed door isn't a failure at all? What if it's actually divine redirection? God stepping in and saying, this isn't it, but I have something better. We tend to look at opportunities as the ultimate signs of progress. We get excited when something looks promising, when all the pieces seem to be lining up. And when suddenly that opportunity is taken away or doesn't work out, it can feel like the ground shifts beneath us. But here's what's important to remember. Just because something looks good doesn't mean it's good for you. God sees what we can't see. He sees down the road behind the scenes and into the hearts of people involved. Sometimes what we think is a blessing might actually be a burden disguised in a shiny package. And in His grace, God gently, or sometimes abruptly, closes the door. That kind of redirection might sting at first. It's natural to feel disappointed when things don't go our way, but disappointment is not the same as defeat. A closed door may simply mean that the timing is off, or that there's growth that still needs to happen before we're ready for what's next. It might mean God is shielding us from pain we never saw coming. What we often label as a no might actually be a not yet, or I have something different in mind. It's also important to realize that closed doors build spiritual resilience. They stretch us to trust deeper, to release control, and to shift our perspective. Every no pushes us closer to the right yes. And when you finally walk through the door that was meant for you, you'll understand why the others had to close. They were part of the journey, but not the destination. You weren't being punished, you were being guided. Instead of seeing a closed door as a stop sign, think of it as a signal to pause and listen. There's wisdom in the waiting and purpose in the pause. God doesn't make mistakes. When He closes a door, He's not shutting you out, He's shifting you into position. The right door is often the one we least expect. We spend so much of our lives trying to predict, plan, and push our way toward what we believe is the best outcome. We set goals, envision timelines, and create detailed maps of where we think our lives should go. But life rarely follows our script. More often than not, the path God leads us on is one we never could have written ourselves. And that's not a sign of failure or misdirection. It's evidence of divine design. We tend to look for doors that match our expectations. We think the next step should be bigger, flashier, or more obvious. We assume the right opportunity will come with clear signs, smooth transitions, and instant confirmation. But God's doors aren't always like that. Sometimes they look small. Sometimes they're hidden behind obstacles. Sometimes they even look like setbacks. That's because the right door isn't always the one that feels easiest. It's the one that fits the purpose God has placed in your life. It's in the unexpected that God often does His best work. You might find the right opportunity in the place you almost overlooked. The job that didn't seem ideal at first glance becomes the place where your gifts blossom. The relationship you weren't seeking becomes the greatest blessing. The closed door you mourned over becomes the reason you discover something far more meaningful. God doesn't just lead you to any door. He leads you to the door that is right for your growth, your calling, and your peace. This is why it's so important to stay open and aware. Sometimes we're so focused on what we want that we miss what we need. We become frustrated when our specific plans fall apart, not realizing they're being replaced by something far better than we imagined. The right door is often not about what looks best on paper. It's about alignment. It's about where your soul is most at peace, where your purpose thrives, and where God can use you most powerfully. It takes trust to embrace the unexpected. It takes humility to admit we don't know everything. But when we step back and let go of the need to control every outcome, we make room for the kind of direction only God can give. And when that right door opens, perhaps in a place you never thought to look, it won't just make sense. It will feel like it was waiting for you all along. Patience is one of the most overlooked and underrated disciplines in the spiritual journey. It's not glamorous. It doesn't produce instant results. It doesn't stir the same excitement as breakthrough or success. But patience is where the real work happens. It's where character is built, faith is stretched, and trust is refined. Waiting on God isn't just about biding time. It's about learning to remain grounded in peace when things are unclear, unanswered, or delayed. So often we equate waiting with inactivity. But patience isn't passive, it's a posture of the heart. It's choosing to stay steady when everything inside you wants to run ahead, fix things yourself, or demand answers. It's waking up each day and continuing to show up, even when the outcome hasn't changed. Patience says, I trust you even though I don't see the full picture. I trust your timing more than my timeline. There's a kind of strength that only comes from patience. It strips away illusions of control and invites us to rely on something deeper. It reveals what we really believe, whether our faith is rooted in outcomes or in God Himself. The waiting seasons, though uncomfortable, are sacred spaces where we are molded. They test our motives, clarify our desires, and often prepare us for the very thing we've been praying for. Sometimes the delay isn't because the blessing isn't ready. It's because we're not. We live in a world that celebrates speed, fast results, instant gratification, and quick answers are what people chase. But God's pace is different. He's not in a hurry because He works with purpose. Every moment of waiting is intentional. It's in the slow unfolding that we learn to listen more closely, to let go more completely, and to depend on Him more fully. The things that last, the things that truly matter, those are rarely rushed. There's also something sacred in learning to rest while you wait. Not the kind of rest that comes from giving up, but the kind that comes from surrender. When you trust that God knows what He's doing, you no longer need to force what's not happening. You can breathe, be present, and find contentment in today, knowing that tomorrow is in good hands. Patience isn't always easy, but it's powerful. It's not just about enduring the wait. It's about growing through it. The longer the wait, the more precise the preparation, and when the time is right, what patience has built will become the foundation for all that is to come. There is something deeply purposeful about the waiting season that many overlook. When things don't move as quickly as we hoped, or doors don't open when we expect them to, it's easy to assume we're being ignored or forgotten. But that couldn't be further from the truth. More often than not, the delay is part of divine preparation. God doesn't just prepare the blessing for you, He prepares you for the blessing. And that process takes time. We all have dreams, goals, and prayers that we carry close to our hearts. We imagine what it will feel like when they finally come to pass. But if those blessings were handed to us too soon, they might overwhelm us. Or worse, we might misuse them. God sees not only what we want, but what we can handle. So in His wisdom, He uses seasons of waiting to shape our hearts, strengthen our character, and deepen our dependency on Him. Preparation happens in the quiet places, far from applause or attention. It's in the unnoticed efforts, the small acts of faithfulness, and the moments when no one is watching that growth takes root. These are the places where integrity is built, resilience is developed, and spiritual maturity begins to take form. God doesn't waste time. If you're in a season where it feels like nothing is happening, you can be sure that something is happening. happening in you. The truth is, blessings carry weight. Opportunities come with responsibilities. Success without preparation can lead to pride or burnout. But when you've been refined in the waiting, you show up different. You walk through open doors, not just with excitement, but with wisdom. You step into answered prayers with gratitude instead of entitlement. The delay, as painful as it can be, often protects us from stepping into something we're not ready for. This preparation is also about alignment. God aligns the right people, places, and timing, not just for your benefit, but for the blessing to be sustained. He orchestrates more than we see, and sometimes what seems like a pause is actually Him arranging something far greater than we expected. The connections you'll need, the strength you'll require, and the insight you'll depend on, they're all being cultivated in this very season. We often pray for open doors, but God loves us too much to open them before we're ready to walk through with purpose. When He finally brings you to that place, you'll look back and see that none of the waiting was wasted. You were being prepared every step of the way. Gratitude is a powerful force that can transform our perspective during times of uncertainty and waiting. It's easy to focus on what we don't have or what hasn't yet happened, especially when we're in seasons of delay or difficulty. But gratitude shifts our attention from what is lacking to what is abundant. It anchors our hearts in the present moment, reminding us that even in waiting, there is something to be thankful for. When we choose to practice gratitude, even in the midst of uncertainty, we unlock a deeper peace that allows us to trust God's timing more fully. Gratitude does more than just help us feel better. It realigns our hearts with God's will. When we thank God for what we have instead of focusing on what we don't, we are affirming our trust in His provision and His timing. It's a declaration that we believe He is working even when we can't see it. It says, I may not have everything I want right now, but I trust that You are good and You are faithful. Gratitude puts us in a posture of humility, acknowledging that every good thing in our lives, no matter how small, is a gift from God. When we focus on gratitude, we are also reminded of God's past faithfulness. By looking back at the ways He has come through for us before, we build a foundation of trust that strengthens our confidence in His future promises. We remember how He has answered prayers, opened doors, and guided us through difficult times. This remembrance fuels our hope even when the future seems uncertain. Gratitude builds a history with God, and that history becomes a powerful testimony to His ongoing presence and provision. Moreover, gratitude shifts our emotional state. In the waiting, it's easy to become discouraged, anxious, or even resentful. But when we choose to give thanks, we change the narrative. Instead of seeing our circumstances as obstacles or setbacks, we start to see them as opportunities for growth, reflection, and deeper reliance on God. Gratitude helps us find joy in the small things, the moments that might otherwise pass by unnoticed, and teaches us to celebrate the process, not just the end result. Choosing to be grateful during a season of waiting does not mean we ignore the difficulties or pretend that things are perfect. Rather, it's about choosing to focus on the goodness that still exists in our lives, even when the situation isn't ideal. Gratitude doesn't erase the challenges, but it does replace anxiety with peace, uncertainty with trust, and impatience with contentment. It's the key that unlocks peace in our hearts and aligns us with God's perfect timing. As we close today, I want to leave you with this powerful reminder. God will open the right door, so don't worry. The doors that remain closed are not setbacks, they are simply redirections. Every closed door is a step closer to the door that is perfectly aligned with your purpose. Trust that the waiting is not in vain, for God is preparing you, refining you, and setting the stage for something far greater than you could ever imagine. While we may not always understand His timing or His ways, we can always trust His heart. He sees what we cannot, and His plan is always for our good. So when things seem uncertain or doors seem to stay shut, remember to hold on to your faith, practice patience, and stay grateful for where you are. Your breakthrough is coming, and when that right door opens, you'll walk through it with strength, wisdom, and peace, knowing that it was all part of a beautiful plan. Until then, keep trusting, keep waiting, and keep believing. The right door is on its way, and God will make sure you are ready to walk through it when the time is right. Don't worry, His timing is always perfect. Thank you.